In the fateful year of 1978, a young, vulnerable 15-year-old girl named Mary found herself hitchhiking her way from the bustling streets of Los Angeles, California, back to the comforting embrace of her parents in Las Vegas, Nevada. Throughout her journey, she had encountered kind-hearted strangers who offered her rides, providing a glimmer of hope in her quest to return home. However, none of them could escort her the entire way, leaving her yearning for a fortunate encounter. Then, as if summoned by her desperate prayers, a man in his 50s appeared, offering to be her savior, promising to accompany her on the entire journey. Yet, beneath the seemingly benevolent offer lurked a sinister caveat that sent shivers down Mary's spine. Doubt gnawed at her, but in her desperation to reach the haven of her hometown, Mary reluctantly agreed, disregarding the growing unease in her gut. She climbed into the van, unaware that she had embarked on a treacherous odyssey that would plunge her into the depths of unimaginable horror. Little did Mary know, her decision to trust this stranger would unleash a nightmarish sequence of events, forever etching her name into one of the most chilling and harrowing hitchhiking stories. Before we dive into the video, if you're a fan of stories about the darker side of our universe, then do yourself a favor and smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our future uploads. During the 1960s and 70s, hitchhiking entails obtaining rides from unfamiliar people, serving as a mode of transportation. The process involved a hitchhiker positioning themselves on the side of a busy road, extending their arm and raising their thumb, which was universally recognized as a signal for hitchhiking. Subsequently, a willing motorist would approach the hitchhiker, pull over their vehicle, and offer a ride. However, in today's context, the notion of entering a stranger's car, or conversely, picking up an unknown individual from the roadside appears exceedingly perilous. Nevertheless, during that era, such practices were regarded as completely ordinary and socially acceptable. Keeping that in mind, on September 29, 1978, a 15-year-old girl named Mary Vincent found herself standing alongside a highway just outside of Modesto, California, a location not too far from San Francisco. Mary, a defiant teenager, had recently escaped from her home in Las Vegas, Nevada. The reason behind her departure was the acrimonious divorce proceedings her parents were going through, which made living at home unbearable for her. Consequently, she embarked on a journey by hitchhiking all the way to her grandfather's residence in Los Angeles, California. However, after spending only a few days there, an overwhelming sense of homesickness enveloped her, and she yearned to return to the company of her parents and family. Seizing an opportunity when her grandfather was away, she discreetly left his house and commenced hitchhiking back to Las Vegas, Nevada. Mary successfully hitchhiked from Los Angeles to Modesto, California, where the first person agreed to give her a ride. At that particular stretch of the highway in Modesto, she was seeking another ride to continue her journey. Alongside her were two other young hitchhikers, each displaying signs indicating their intention to travel south rather than sticking out their thumbs. During the afternoon, a light blue passenger van with only one occupant, the driver, caught their attention. The driver, a man in his 50s, appeared harmless. Spotting their signs, he pulled over and parked about 15 feet ahead of their location. Mary's fellow companions opted to stay where they were, while Mary hurried toward the light blue van. As she approached, she peered through the rolled-down passenger side window and asked the man, "Hey, can you give all three of us a ride? We're heading south." In response, the man glazed at Mary and replied, "I can only give you a ride." This statement left Mary perplexed, as she observed ample space within the van and wondered why she alone was allowed to travel, while her companions shared the same destination. Curious, she gently probed the man, asking if he would reconsider and include her friends as well. However, he resolutely stated, "Look, I'll take you. I will not take them." Mary responded, "All right, just give me a moment. Let me go back and retrieve my bag." The driver remained parked as Mary exited the van and hurried back to her two companions. She relayed the situation to them and they expressed their concerns, emphasizing that something seemed suspicious about the man. Despite sharing these reservations, Mary's intense longing to return home overpowered her. She couldn't bear the thought of waiting for another ride, which might not come until the next day or even later, as not every driver was willing to pick up hitchhikers. Time was of the essence for her, and she didn't want to prolong her journey any further. Determined, she bid farewell to her friends, swiftly picked up her bag, and sprinted back to the van, promptly occupying the passenger seat. Immediately after settling into the passenger seat and shutting the door, the man, who introduced himself as Lawrence Singleton, resumed driving onto the road. Mary was nervous, but Lawrence's amicable demeanor quickly put Mary at ease, reminding her of her grandfather. He displayed kindness and politeness, fostering a sense of comfort. As Mary began to feel fatigued early into their journey, she requested permission from Lawrence to doze off while he continued driving. Without hesitation, Lawrence granted her request, assuring her that it was not a problem. Mary turned away from Lawrence, curling up on the seat, and swiftly fell asleep. Upon awakening after a while, she glanced out the window and immediately realized they were headed in the wrong direction. Concerned, she turned to Lawrence and informed him that they were going the wrong way. In response, Lawrence admitted his mistake, assuring her that he would rectify it and apologizing for the error. Mary, however, couldn't shake off the feeling that they had veered significantly off course and that it couldn't have been a mere accident. Suppressing her suspicions, she remained silent as Lawrence turned the vehicle around and resumed their journey in the correct direction. Despite her unease, Mary remained cautious not to reveal her apprehension to Lawrence, as she still didn't truly know his intentions. She cautiously surveyed her surroundings, her anxiety palpable. Eventually, they arrived at a stretch of highway that passed through a sparsely forested area, with few cars present. Suddenly, Lawrence announced his need to pull over for a restroom break. He expressed his desire to relieve himself. Mary, feeling apprehensive, reluctantly agreed, saying, "Yeah, okay, that's fine," albeit with caution. As Lawrence began to steer the vehicle off the highway, Mary happened to glance down and noticed one of her shoes was untied. Instantly, an instinctual thought crossed her mind. She should tie her shoe to ensure she would be ready to run away if the need arose. However, she hesitated to reach down and tie her shoe due to the limited space in the car, worried that it might appear suspicious. Instead, she devised a plan to wait until they pulled over, then exit the car and tie her shoe discreetly. As Lawrence pulled over, Mary observed that he didn't simply stop on the shoulder of the road. Instead, he veered onto an access road leading into the forest. Alarm bells started ringing in Mary's mind as she sensed that something was gravely amiss. Uncertain of how to approach the situation, she refrained from engaging in conversation with Lawrence or even making eye contact. In her mind, she weighed her options, contemplating whether to confront him or to make a swift escape. After venturing deep into the forest, ensuring they were out of sight from the main road, Lawrence brought the car to a halt and stepped out, ostensibly to relieve himself. Seizing the opportunity, Mary promptly exited the vehicle, intending to complete tying her shoe. However, before she could finish the task, a sudden, powerful blow struck the back of her head with force, rendering her unconscious. It was Lawrence who had concealed a hammer next to his seat, revealing his sinister intentions as he circled the vehicle instead of tending to his supposed need. With a calculated strike, he ruthlessly assaulted Mary, leaving her incapacitated and unconscious. Mary was lying down in the back of the van when she awoke, and she could see from the windows that they were still parked in the midst of the forest. When she attempted to move, she realized that everything, including her hands and feet, had been secured to the van. She was immobile. Lawrence then turns around while she's trying to figure out what is happening. He lets the van's back doors open. He jumps inside and starts assaulting her. Mary begged him to stop, but Lawrence continued his assault for hours. Eventually, Lawrence grew wary and dismounted Mary, making his way to the front seats where he settled in for sleep. Left alone in the back of the van, Mary likely attempted to free herself from the tight restraints, but her efforts proved futile. Hours passed as she lay there, consumed by uncertainty and fear, contemplating her grim fate. In the midst of the night, Lawrence abruptly awoke, silently slipping out of the vehicle without uttering a word to Mary. Taking his place behind the wheel, he drove the van out of the forest, initially following the main road before veering onto an access road, ensuring they remained hidden from prying eyes. Eventually, they arrived at a desolate spot within a vast canyon. Lawrence parked the van, disembarking and making his way to the rear. Opening the back door, he confronted Mary, who lay there whimpering and pleading for release. Climbing inside, he subjected her to hours of further torment, prolonging her anguish until the break of dawn. As the first rays of sunlight pierced the horizon, Lawrence ceased his assault. Stepping out of the van, he stood Mary, facing her, and proceeded to release her from the restraints that had held her captive. Guiding her out of the van, he positioned her on the ground, her body battered, bloodied, and trembling. Overwhelmed with emotion, she tearfully implored him, "Please, set me free." Lawrence's response to Mary's plea for freedom was chillingly sinister. Without hesitation, he circled the utterly broken and traumatized 15-year-old girl, making his way to the rear of the van. Retrieving a hatchet from his toolbox, he returned to face Mary once more. In that fleeting moment, Mary caught sight of the weapon clenched in his hand, her heart sinking with dread. With a swift, fluid motion, Lawrence lunged forward, seizing her left arm by the wrist with his left hand. Raising the hatchet high above his head, he ruthlessly brought it down, severing her arm just below the elbow. Mary collapsed to the ground, her gaze fixated on the vacant space where her left arm had once been, shock consuming her. Before she could comprehend the horrifying reality of the situation, Lawrence advanced once more, gripping her right wrist with his left hand. The impending terror dawned upon Mary as she understood his intentions. She screamed and thrashed, desperately attempting to fend him off, but his grasp was unyielding. With each strike, Lawrence relentlessly hacked at her right forearm, the sound of impact echoing through the air. It took 4 brutal blows before her right arm was gruesomely severed from her body. Overwhelmed by agony and disbelief, Mary crumpled to the ground, a shattered and anguished figure. Mary's body was drenched in a torrent of blood. Her piercing screams echoed through the air, a symphony of agonizing pain. Yet, Lawrence's attention was fixated on the grotesque sight before him, Mary's severed hand. Clutched onto his left arm during the grisly amputation, now stubbornly clinging to him. With an air of indifference, he attempted to casually dislodge the hand, flicking and shaking it until it finally released its grip. Turning his gaze back to Mary, he was met with a haunting silence. Her lifeless form lay limp amidst a vast pool of crimson. Relegating the bloodied hatchet back to its place within the van, Lawrence approached Mary's motionless body. Grasping her, he callously dragged her along for about 100 feet, heading toward a culvert nearby. The culvert, a sizable tunnel situated beneath the access road, served as a conduit for water and runoff, safely preserving the integrity of the road above. Positioned approximately 30 feet below the road's surface, the edges of the road abruptly dropped off, leading to the opening of the culvert on either side. Unrelenting in his brutality, Lawrence transported Mary's lifeless form to the precipice of the road, directly above the culvert. With a callous gesture, he hurled her body over the edge, subjecting her to a bone-shattering impact on the rocks below. Methodically traversing the treacherous path down to where she lay, he meticulously wedged her inside the depths of the culvert. As he walked away from the macabre scene, Lawrence uttered a chilling remark, almost taunting in nature. "Now you're free." Despite enduring unimaginable horrors, Mary miraculously clung to life throughout the relentless assault. Each moment seemed interminable, but deep within her, a survival instinct urged her to feign death. With a grim determination, she surrendered her body to an inert state, feigning lifelessness. Through half-opened eyes, she observed Lawrence flicking her severed hand, remaining completely motionless as he callously dragged her toward the culvert, her body an empty vessel devoid of any response. Even when he callously cast her down the treacherous 30-foot drop onto jagged rocks, fracturing her ribs and inflicting excruciating pain, she maintained her stillness, stifling any cries that threatened to escape. Her will to survive whispered to her, commanding her to endure the punishment in silence, knowing it was her only chance at survival. After Lawrence departed, Mary's mind raced with cautionary thoughts. Uncertain of his whereabouts, she recognized the peril of exposing herself by attempting to crawl out and seek help. The lurking possibility that he might return to finish what he started loomed over her, keeping her confined to the dark recesses of the culvert. In her torment, her limbs severed and her ribs broken, she remained in a twisted position, held captive by her injuries and the uncertainty of the situation. Time passed and a profound weariness washed over Mary, a consequence of the blood loss she had endured. A voice in her mind resolutely warned her against succumbing to the slumber, reminding her that surrendering to exhaustion would seal her fate. She knew that her survival meant halting the monstrous Lawrence, preventing him from inflicting his savagery on another innocent victim. Thus, she fought the drowsiness that threatened to overtake her, clinging to the flickering flame of consciousness as her valiant sentinel. Filled with a surge of adrenaline and an unwavering determination to survive, Mary made a resolute decision. She would escape, no matter the risks. Bracing herself for the unknown, uncertain if her tormentors still lingered nearby, she mustered the strength to extricate herself from the confining depths of the culvert. Once on solid ground, she instinctively pressed her arm stumps onto the earth, using dirt and mud to pack her grievous wounds. In a bid to prevent the spillage of blood and exposed muscle, she raised her mutilated arms above her head, an agonizing effort to maintain what little remained of her shattered limbs. With her body drenched in blood, devoid of clothing, and in a state of shock, she commenced a desperate crawl up the embankment, inching her way toward the road. After an arduous ascent, Mary, bearing witness to the horrifying sight she presented, started running along the highway. A passing car swiftly approached, yet the occupants, startled by her ghastly appearance, failed to halt their vehicle, continuing on their way. Undeterred, Mary persevered, sprinting a grueling 3 miles along the desolate stretch until, at last, she managed to flag down a passing couple, a stroke of fortuity. Overwhelmed by the initial shock of her visage, the compassionate couple quickly ushered her into the car, racing toward the nearest hospital. Mary would spend a month under the care of medical professionals, a time during which she bravely provided the police with a detailed account of her assailant, Lawrence Singleton. Her meticulous description enabled law enforcement to create an accurate composite sketch. Coincidentally, Singleton's neighbor came across the sketch and promptly alerted the authorities, leading to his arrest. In court, Mary courageously testified, recounting the unspeakable horrors she endured. Following the trial, Singleton received a maximum sentence of 14 years, as dictated by the law. The judge, sympathetic to Mary's plight, wished to impose a harsher penalty, but was bound by legal constraints. Departing the courthouse, Mary found herself in close proximity to Lawrence. Seizing the opportunity, he leaned in and chillingly whispered, "I'll finish the job if it takes me the rest of my life." After 8 years, Lawrence was released on parole for exhibiting good behavior. Naturally, this news instilled fear in Mary, who had since married and become a mother to 2 sons. She worried that his newfound freedom would result in him seeking vengeance by completing what he had started. However, Lawrence did not target Mary. Instead, he assaulted another woman, Roxanne Hayes, a 31-year-old mother of 3. Tragically, he took her life. During Roxanne's murder trial, Mary bravely testified against Lawrence, providing crucial evidence that led to his sentencing to death. Before the execution could take place, Lawrence succumbed to cancer while in jail in 2001. Learning of his demise, Mary experienced a profound sense of injustice. Nonetheless, her sons found solace in the knowledge that their mother's attacker was no longer a threat. It was in response to the outrage of Lawrence's premature release, given the heinous nature of his crimes and the subsequent loss of another life, that the Lawrence Singleton Bill was enacted. This legislation grants judges the authority to impose sentences of 25 years to life in cases involving torture. Under this bill, Lawrence would have remained incarcerated for life, ensuring he would never have been released following the atrocities he committed against Mary. If you enjoyed this video, then make sure you hit that subscribe button. We post new stories every week covering the darker side of our universe. If you want to see more videos like this, then I highly recommend that you click the video now on screen. That video has been selected specifically for you. Enjoy.